Padre Pio from Pietrelcina, an inside and outside look of the image of Christ crucified that God has given to everyone to see, a sign of the times. A friar nailed to the Gargano, Padre Pio arrived in San Giovanni Rotondo in the evening of the 28th of July 1916. The convent was connected to the town by a dirt path of 1.5 kilometres. It had been there for almost 400 years. A humble jewel of devotion that saw Padre Pio perform his mission. For many years in this small church, Padre Pio celebrated, confessed, guided, exhorted, prayed, suffered, and consumed himself for the sins of his brethren. Today the faithful come here to pray, purifying their souls, spilling tears of contrition for their sins, and to reconcile, leaving joyously and full of faith in God. The old church was named after Santa Maria della Grazia on the 5th of July in 1676. At the centre of the major altar sits an oil canvas depicting the Virgin of Grace, dated around 500. On the left we can find the confessional where Padre Pio absolved women, while men confessed in the sacristy. Since the 30th of October 2002, in this small church it is possible to gain the plenary indulgence. On the 1st of July 1959, the consecration of the new church, Santa Maria della Grazia, took place. The church was built, imposing and majestic. Though it took only 3 years to build, Padre Pio urged the architect the church must be a hymn to the glory of God for his art and wealth, but above all, a true home of prayer and contemplation. The spacious presbytery of Santa Maria della Grazia is dominated by 120 square metres of mosaics portraying Our Lady of Grace surrounded by angels. The mosaics recall a story taken from an autobiography of the 15-year-old Francesco Forgione, when the Lord clearly made him understand his wish through a vision. In September 1968, in this church, the body of Padre Pio remained in exposition for 4 days, allowing the crowds to look, cry, touch, kiss, and pray. The crypt was excavated under the church, and for 40 years it held the body of the saint. It was blessed on the morning of the 22nd of September 1968, 17 hours before Padre Pio's death, and it was opened to the public on the 27th of September 1968, the day after the funeral. I will always remember in my prayers the generosity of the people. I will beg for them peace and prosperity. And as a sign of my love, nothing else I can do, I voice my wish, hoping my superiors will not oppose, that my bones be buried in a peaceful corner of this earth. It was the friar himself, in a letter written to the then Mayor Francesco Mercaldi on the 12th of August 1923, to state his wishes to be buried in San Giovanni Rotondo. On the same site in March of 2008, the exhumation of Padre Pio's body took place. He was displayed for veneration for 17 months. 5.5 million were the pilgrims that arrived and prayed in front of the relic of the body. Amongst these was Pope Benedict XVI on his visit on the 21st of June 2009. Whoever follows the pathway of the pilgrims, starting from the crypt, will find themselves in an ambience built from what at Padre Pio's period was a patio. It has been named the Room of the Letters because a whole wall is covered by a board that holds letters received by the saint in a year, from May 1965 to April 1966, the only ones that have been saved. At the centre of the room, amongst various vestiture and liturgical objects used by Padre Pio, there is the chasuble and the surplice worn by him on the last Mass he celebrated the morning of the 22nd of September 1968. The second place we encounter is cell number 1. Because it had 2 windows and was spacious, it was given to Padre Pio to dwell in, due to the respiratory condition he suffered from 1948 and that kept aggravating him. His first cell, number 5, roughly half the size, is not yet opened to the public. His superiors gave him permission to also use this room. Padre Pio used it as a studio and as a room to receive in private audience few specific individuals. Usually Padre Pio rested in cell number 1. From the second window, the one sitting above a wash basin, every day he would look out and bless his followers that saluted him from the lawn, situated to the south of the reclusive convent where they stood. This space is called the Piazzale of the Blessings. Many of his lucky sons remembered fondly the healthy advice he gave, received by him sitting on that small chair that became the teaching of divine and human hope. On this chair, at 2:30 in the morning of the 23rd of September 1968, the Holy Friar died while uttering the names of Jesus and Mary. On the same floor, but in the reclusive convent, there are 2 important places in the life of Padre Pio: cell number 5 and the Sacellum. Cell number 5 is the one occupied by Padre Pio on his arrival at San Giovanni Rotondo. Here he lived, prayed, meditated, suffered, and was tormented by the devil and by his numerous temptations, but also gave birth to his great dream, the Casa della Sofferenza, his magnificent work. In this small and humble cell, Padre Pio received the gift of transverberation of the heart, or the moment when the soul of a saint is burned by the love of God. The 5th of August 1918, Padre Pio's soul was attacked internally by a celestial being that pierced him with a burning dart. This phenomenon is a step towards his mystic itinerary that will reach its apex on the morning of the 20th of September of the same year, when the bleeding wounds of the crucified became visible for the rest of his life. Across from cell number 5 is Padre Pio's private chapel. He often stopped there to give thanks for the Holy Mass and often confessed there. From 1931 to 1933, he was deprived of his ministry, but he could only celebrate Mass and only in his private chapel. A well-known period to writers, a period famous for the segregation of Padre Pio. Across the restrictive convent, a few steps ahead, we can find 2 connecting rooms, room 29 and room 30, the rooms used for seminarians. Padre Pio too slept in one of these rooms, the first from 1916 until 1919, when Father Paolino of Cascalenda was superior of the convent, while Padre Pio was spiritual director of the young friars marching towards the priesthood. This place was strategic for him because it gave him the possibility to supervise both cells, one directly, the other through a small window opened on the partition wall. Opposite these rooms there is another ex-classroom, marked by number 28. There Padre Pio taught to seminarians every Saturday evening at 6 o'clock. Before evening prayers, he held spiritual conferences with the group. There is a double cell where the young friars studying to become priests frequented lessons from the years 1909 till 1932. Although it is only a walk-through room, the St. Francis room is well renowned. Here, in fact, Padre Pio greeted a limited number of men that awaited his passing when he finished Mass and walked from the main church to reach his cell. This room got its name from a painting held in here, depicting the poor man of Assisi, stigmatized. The itinerary takes us to cell number 25. On the 5th of October 1925, in this very room, Padre Pio received surgical intervention for a large hernia, diagnosed by Dr. Giorgio Festa, the same that performed the surgery the saint himself asked him to. Knowing the surgeon's intentions, Padre Pio refused anaesthetic to avoid unconsciousness in case unauthorised questions would be asked regarding the stigmata, something which happened when Padre Pio lost his senses. Now this room is a small museum that holds all the items used to heal various and mysterious diseases he had. Among these items are also the tools used for the surgery of the 5th of October 1925. The last phase is the choir loft of the stigmata. It is the choir loft of the old church where Padre Pio, the morning of the 20th of September 1918, received the visible stigmata, which he had for 50 years until the disappearance just before his death. The main character himself recounted this extraordinary event, an account for future generations to know of a supernatural experience. It was the morning of the 20th of last month, in the choir loft, after the celebration of the Holy Mass. I was struck by numbness, something similar to a mellow slumber. My whole being, inside and out, including my soul, were pervaded by a peacefulness that goes beyond description. All around and inside me there was total silence. An indescribable peace and complete abandonment to everything overtook me. All this happened in an instant. And while all this was happening, in front of me appeared a mysterious being, same as the one I saw on the night of the 5th of August. The difference was that this one bled from the hands, feet and sides. His vision terrified me. What I felt in that instant I cannot describe. I felt like dying, and I would have if the Lord had not intervened by stopping my heart from exploding out of my body. The vision of the character disappeared, and I found myself with perforated hands, feet and sides that bled. Actually, the stigmata appeared for the first time on the body of Padre Pio a few days or weeks. We haven't a definite date for this event after he was ordained, which took place on the 10th of August 1910. At that time, the friar was in his Pietrelcina. The stigmata was visible, but because of his young age, such a phenomenon terrified him, so he prayed to the Lord for the disappearance of such a visible experience. From then on, the wounds disappeared, but the excruciating pain remained. Those wounds would reappear to stay on the 20th of September of 1918 in San Giovanni Rotondo. Opposite the wooden cross of the choir loft in the same old church that witnessed the mystic experience, there is a window from where Padre Pio saluted and blessed pilgrims who usually gathered in the churchyard. Still nowadays remains a symbol, an ideal bond between a father and his spiritual children. The churchyard of Santa Maria della Grazia is connected to the ample square of the newly consecrated church and has been named after St. Padre Pio of Pietrelcina on the 1st of July in 2004. It is the new face of the sacred places of San Giovanni Rotondo. An architectural complex that is formed not only by one church but three, a lower, superior and an open church that have been added to the pre-existing churches. A modern complex but in continuity with past, present and future. It was built with simple elements, stone, wood and copper, in tune with the Franciscan austerity. Entering the liturgy room or superior church, we remain breathless by the feeling of vastness and originality. It is a blend of ancient tradition mixed to match the present day and embellished with a strong, influential expression of catechetics. The walls of the Chapel of the Holy Sacrament have been adorned by a painting that represents the 8th day, the day of eternity of man that becomes Christ, because Christ has become man, the day of Eucharist, the day without time. The slope that takes us to the crypt where the body of Padre Pio lies is adorned by beautiful mosaics which illustrate scenes taken from the life of St. Francis of Assisi and St. Pio of Pietrelcina. From the 19th of April 2010, the relic of the body of St. Pio from Pietrelcina has been moved to the lower church. From the 1st of June 2013, the saint's remains have been exhibited to pilgrims for veneration, to pray and intercede for their needs, above all to witness what a man just like us, with the body, same as ours, has succeeded in reaching sanctity, the sanctity which each one of us is called to. Padre Pio loved men sincerely, loved them like children of God, his brothers. He prayed a lot for us. For our spiritual well-being, he became everyone's Cyrenaic. Padre Pio had 3 dreams for his children: the Casa della Sofferenza, a new church, and a home for elderly clerics. His first dream became reality in the year 1956. To ease pain, he invented the Cathedral of Charity and called it Casa della Sofferenza. The Casa was the apple of his eyes, and he considered it a miracle of charity and faith. To whoever dared to say that it was too luxurious, he would answer, "Too luxurious. If I could, I would make it in gold, because nothing is too good for the sick. The sick are Jesus, and everything we do for him is never enough." The 5th of May 1956, the news that everyone was waiting for arrived. The inauguration of the Casa della Sofferenza. To the multitude of people present, he defined it as a creature from the divine providence. After this achievement for the sick, spiritual miracles started to multiply. People started to convert, change their way of life. Men and women returned to the church. Even when he was alive, there was a need for a bigger church. A church that could embrace all the pilgrims that arrived from every angle of the world. Not a matchbox, he used to say. In the year 1959, the church had just been built, but his wish was a sanctum that could hold his children, so they could find themselves at the font of the Word of God and the sacraments, reconciled with themselves, the future generation, their history, and above all, God. His brothers, asking for help from the faithful, have made his second dream come true: the new church. Padre Pio's third dream was that of building a place where they can host clerics, a true and own domus sacerdotalis, where the elderly clerics can dwell. Also, a presbytery that can help through the pastoral sacrament of reconciliation and the acceptance of pilgrims. St. Pio strongly wished for this dream to come true. His brothers want to help him make it come true. We need your help. From today onwards, you can be a part of this wonderful project.